Monday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morgan. We're at the Motor City Madmouth. Of course, with my voice nowadays, people might make a case for mild, but, we'll get that situation figured out down the road. But pleased to have our MLB Division Series edition. So have a lot of great information that you'll want to stick around for. Meanwhile, we're going to talk about the Dodgers, the Padres, the Detroit Tigers, some predictions, and I have a feel-good story that I'm going to mix in here at the very end. Welcome back, George.
Oh, good to be back again. Great seeing you, Scott, Mark, Trent. Good to be back.
Hope
we
you had a
missed
good
having
time.
you, George.
Yeah. Hope you had a good time on Monday Night Football. The result certainly turned out in your benefit.
I did. Thank you.
And Trent, you never know where to find him, but here he is. At least you find him on our network. Anywhere else is anybody's guess.
That's right. It's good to be with you, Motor City. I'm going to call you the Motor City Banker tonight with that tie, bro.
Oh, yeah. Wait till I give you the explanation why I have it on. I don't think I've ever worn a tie on one of these shows, but there's always a time when you have to do something, and I picked the right show to do it. And we'll talk about the barber. Does he need a barber? I don't know, but the nickname suits him pretty well.
Only thing I've been cutting is my grass. Other than that, it's been stagnant around my barber shop. Let's just put it that way. And this barber right now would love to give haircuts to like Mike Tomlin and the crew to see if he could let their brains ooze out a little bit into a more common sense approach to coaching.
Tell me how you really feel. All right. Well, the moment everybody's been waiting for here is my I told you so moment. Okay. And I repeat my I told you so moment. The Mets topped the Brewers in the wild card series. Yes. That's why I'm wearing this thinking man's tie. It's the first time I've ever worn a tie in these shows. And you know what, George? You know what you missed? I'm going to tell you something. Okay. You missed the Barber and the Trent picking the Brewers, where I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pick the Mets because they're playing a lot better. They're playing like playoff baseball. So I'm going with the Mets. And as a result, I'm going to divulge it for a worldwide audience, okay? It's called the Thinking Man's Tie. The Thinking Man's Tie makes its debut on 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. And because of good old Trent and because of good old the Barber, I told you so. And my wife looked at me and said, why are you wearing that? And then she looked at when we were putting the thing on. Oh, now I know. By the way, Joshua Dorr, how are you? What's going on, buddy? Barber, how many haircuts? You know you're going to get that question every time he comes on. And he says, I'm looking fresh. Well, Joshua, the only thing I'm looking fresh is I'm wearing a tie. And trust me, my other hat doesn't see me in a tie more than 5 or 6 years in the 12 years we've been together. But this was one of those moments I had to do it in honor of Trent Clark and in honor of the Barber. Yes, the Mets defeated the Brewers. And these two guys are looking at us and, oh, knows what he's going to do next time when he puts out these predictions. Don't worry, I got more predictions. So there you have it, folks. First of all, I'm only going to go to, well, I'll go to everybody. Trent, what do you think of the tie?
Well, first of all, is that a Windsor knot? I don't know what you got going over there.
I have no idea what knots are with these things. I have no idea. Whoever pre-tied it for me before, that's the kind of knot that it is.
Yeah, I got it. It's a clip-on thinker's tie. I appreciate that, Motor City.
I wish it was a clip-on tie because it would be a whole lot better looking than it is now. I just slipped this thing on and made it work. It's called
Slipknot's one of my favorite bands. So, got that going. I don't think I had a good week, Motor City. I mean, I think I was 500 on the playoffs. Like, I did not call the Tigers either.
Okay, what about you, Barber?
Many people didn't.
Barber, we already know what you think. We already know what you think of Tomlin. So why don't you just direct your comments on what you think about the tie?
I love the tie. You are a thinking man. Every time I notice you on the show, you're sitting there contemplating something. Something good's going to come out of that mouth. You're right. You're showing a little class, a little style, and I'm sure Candy absolutely adores that tie as well right now.
Well, I have to admit it's a good luck tie. When I passed a 215 license, I was wearing this tie out there, so it is a good luck tie. All right, George, you can even get your 2 cents on it.
Oh, well, the thinking man's tie belongs to a thinking man, and that's you, Scott. I love it. I love it. That tie reminds me of what was that show? Was that the Dobie Gillis show? I forget. One of those old comedy.
What?
What?
The what?
Gillis? Is that what
Dobie
you
Gillis.
said?
Seriously?
Dobie
Seriously? Really? Really? And by the way, one of the new extras I have on these shows is I need to get 2 seriouslys and 2 reallys on the show. And now Eichhorn allowed me to get them early in here. Because
The guy that
if
was on Gilligan's Island was in another show before that. And I think he had that thinking man's image, but you got a better one, Scott.
Well,
Yeah.
you can't tell me that it's a skipper. The only thing he was ever doing was thinking about what
No.
his next meal was. That's all. And if you're talking about the professor, it might be the closest thing because Mr. Owl had a lot of money, but it's not like he was buying anything from the snakes or any of those, whatever you call it, on that island. So
Yeah.
the only
snakes
one
nose.
the only one that would qualify for it would be I would say the professor. But anyways, George, I like to wear it as my favorite tie. And as soon as I went out there and predicted the Mets, because number one, let me just preface you people, if you didn't see last week's show with Trent, Mark, and myself, I said the reason why the Mets are going to win this series is number one, they've had to play playoff type of baseball to get here. Number two, Christian Yelich wasn't going to save them this time either. You need your best players during the postseason. And number three, they hadn't played meaningful baseball in a while. But you know what? Their season was 2-out. So there you have it. So while these guys rode the Brewers, I don't want to say anything about my wife because she's from the area, and I don't want her to go out there and lay out the drop the hammer on me because I knew who she was a Brewers homer anyway, so it's different. I don't put her in that discussion because your hometown team is your hometown team, but I still think you're going to be wrong. And I got the old candy growl, okay, until obviously the Mets topped the Brewers. And Willie Adames may have played his last game. There you go. That's what I had to deal with, folks. All right. So there you have it. That's the store. Any more things you want to put out, Joshua Door? Bring it on. All right. Well, we're going to go to the West Coast with this one because the LA Dodgers and the San Diego Padres are 1-1 as this series shifts back to San Diego on Tuesday. But in the past couple of seasons for the Dodgers, postseasons, I should add, Mookie Betts is 0-22. George, they're paying him a lot of money. Can't we buy a hit?
Yeah, tell me about it. They sure need him. They need him now. But that was a really humiliating loss, 10-2 to San Diego. The Dodgers are tied now, and boy, you get this feeling that could this be another fold job by LA? But as far as Mookie goes, yeah, I mean that's unacceptable. I mean you can't have a slugger, you can't have a guy making that superstar money performing at that level and not contributing. It's a very disgusting situation for him right now. But he's just got to take one at bat at a time. Any coach will tell you, right, Trent? Take it one at bat, one pitch at a time, even, and try to get out of the slump. But it's more than just him. He didn't do everything. He wasn't the only one that contributed to that 10-2 loss, but. Yeah, I mean, they've got to bounce back right now, and Mookie's right at the top of the list, needing a bounce back really big time.
All right. Well, now that he referenced Trent, I'll do it as well. What do you think, Trent? About Mookie?
Yeah, I mean, it's never good. It's never good when the superstar player, and you saw this in New York with A-Rod back in the day, and you want your big guys to contribute when it comes to playoff. You want them, and of course, they're right in the middle of the heart of the lineup. You can't afford not for them to really produce because it really messes the whole scheme of things, right? It really puts your run production off to the side. So you saw that they scored 7 the first night without him contributing, which was pretty impressive. But we saw in game 2, not sustainable. Like you can't have a guy in the middle of the lineup who does not contribute in that way. And, I think this is back to, when you play 162 games, it is not great to get 4 or 5 days off. Guys go into off-season golf mode. Like they don't sit there and stay at that level of peak performance that you need. And, I remember thinking, like, when you win a series early, we were trying to formulate back in the day, like, do we go to spring training and go to the complex and work with the fall ball kids who are
Right.
down there and just play some actual innings and keep guys on their toes and keep them moving? Because it's never good after that kind of, 162 games in 5 months. It's 1 day off a month, right? Like, you get 5 days off for a season minus the All-Star break. So it is not much. And so back to Mookie, it's alarming. Mookie's a great player, was obviously player of the year just 3-4 years ago. I expect Mookie to bounce back and be a significant impact down in San Diego. I don't expect those Dodgers to roll over going down the I-4 and going down into San Diego. They'll come ready.
All right, Mark.
Mookie missed a nice chunk of the season, and I wonder how much that has impacted him. Now, I know he came back and he played, and they played some regular season games, so on and so forth, but they were kind of, once he came back, they were kind of in a spot where they knew they were going to be in the playoffs. They knew they were going to clinch. They knew that they were all ready to go. And they started doing some different things and starting to get some other guys ready along the way. It takes away from that competitive juices in an effort to get to where you want to get to. And I kind of feel like, I don't know if I'm making sense, you guys. What I'm saying is, he needed to be part of the competition to get to the playoffs in order to get his peak level going again. If you come back and you're not performing at a peak level based on the level of competition because you're trying to get to the next step in the season, I feel like that doesn't prepare you going into the playoffs. I hope I made sense with that. I know what my brain is thinking.
Okay.
Go ahead, Trent.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing. And I agree with the barber. Seconded again that I think this time off, and it's not good for players. But there was a turning point last night in the game, and that pitcher started throwing shade on Machado when he struck him out. And I think San Diego put up about 8 after that. Like, they absolutely put a whipping. He woke up a giant running his mouth with some proud team down in San Diego that are driven by the Latinos. Their Latino players really drive that team. And those guys play with another level of passion. You see it in the playoffs, especially. But, man, I wouldn't come at the jugular over in San Diego again, because they found out. They found out what happens when you start running your mouth against them. And, and I love the meme this morning that I saw, which said, the players of San Diego weren't too offended by being thrown at stuff, so they continued to deposit new baseballs out in the home run zone. So, they were nice enough to do that and keep going, and even expecting those balls to be coming back at them. And I tell you, that's unacceptable for me, Motor City. Like, players, our fans throwing at players, that's wrong on a whole nother level. And that stuff would have been interesting to clear the first 10 rows and say you're in standing room only now, and police that, because that sends a message to everybody like this stuff's not going to happen.
Well, obviously what you're referring to is the trash talking going on between Jack Flaherty and Manny Machado. So there's no love lost between the two as well. So yeah, I'm glad you brought those points up. Well, we'll continue on this theme though. And Padres manager Mike Shildt was quoted as saying that San Diego fans will stay classy at Petco Park and behave better than the Dodgers fans. Shildt calls fans throwing objects on the field as unacceptable. And by the way, there's no love lost between these two cities, because the Clippers moved to LA, right? And of course, the Chargers are in LA. So with that said, Trent, I'm going to lead off with you on this one.
Yeah, I think there is no love lost. I mean, these are two powerhouse teams right now, and the Dodgers have reigned supreme for some time. And I think the Padres really want to knock them off the pedestal, and they're hungry for it. And, maybe a little tired having to go through the 3-game series and do their thing there. And, got nipped in that first game. And I think Flaherty might have woke up the giant. He might have made a big mistake in that.
Okay, Jay in the chat room said, I just got your book today. All right, Jay, thanks. I appreciate that. What I'll do is call you the next day or so. We'll find out how we get you the second copy and we can go from there. Thank you very much. Jay is one of our newest people in the chat room. This guy's a class act if I ever saw one. So this guy, welcome back, Jay. We're talking baseball tonight, and I have an excellent crew. All right, we'll turn over to the barber.
I was thinking to myself that, yeah, the Dodgers have been, they rival with San Diego out there, but it's San Diego's turn. They've been trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. They've invested in that team. They've dialed the dial whichever direction they needed to until they found the right frequency. And I certainly think that they will put the Dodgers in their place. I honestly, this is me personally, okay, fellas. I don't think it's going to be much of a series after they got stoked last night. I think they took that really personal after all these years getting smashed down, and I think we'll see a nice run by San Diego beyond LA.
Okay. George.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is bad timing for the fans to get involved in this. Okay, that was not right, and it led to more bad blood between these two teams. And you're right, this is a situation where they're very close to each other geographically. They are definitely rivals. I agree with what you said about Mark. They've been trying for this type of team for years and years and years, buying up as many bats and pitchers as they can over the years in free agency and making the right moves. So, I mean, San Diego obviously is hungry, but the Dodgers should be very hungry too. I mean, they've fallen on their faces the last few years in the postseason, and that's unacceptable to any Dodger fan. And while you were on there talking, Scott, I looked up Mookie, and he only has 4 home runs in 8 different seasons of postseason play. That's how bad he's been in the postseason. You look at 8 years with Boston and LA, the man only has 4 dingers. That is totally unacceptable. But again, Flaherty lost his cool. There's plenty of other examples. There's plenty of other guilt to go around after that game. And by the way, I think the umpires handled it the right way. They knew there was a situation out there in left field, and I applaud the umpiring crew for trying to get involved and trying to settle things down. But the damage has been done psychologically. The damage has been done, and that's the fact that, like you referred to, Trent, about the Dodgers, poking the angry bear, so to speak. So it could be over. We'll see. I'd be interested to see that game coming back at San Diego tomorrow.
Well, let me tell you this. Number one, if the postseason woes continue, I wouldn't be surprised. By the way, Jay, you're welcome. If Dave Roberts finally gets let go at some point, because the Dodgers are paying way too much money, okay, to go ahead and not win it all. Number two, I've been saying this. You guys know I've been very consistent. Watch out for San Diego. This team is going to be dangerous. They will. I saw them play against the Marlins, and I've watch them on TV a little bit, and this team is tough. They really are, and the thing is, they got Mike Shildt as their manager. Think about Bob Melvin left that job in San Diego to go to the Giants. Mike Shildt, who unfortunately got let go by the St. Louis Cardinals, had an opportunity to take that job, and now they're looking like a genius. Now Melvin goes north, and Shildt goes to the Southwest. So I think San Diego's dangerous. I really do. So I don't know. Of course, well, like I said to you before, when you're able to land 2 of San Diego's teams, like the Clippers, of course, back then they weren't any good, and then you land the Chargers, that's not going to help the bad blood between those 2 towns, separated by about a couple of miles anyhow. But that said, I'm going to let Katie Gambley come on for a station break. And if she wants to hammer me on the Brewers, she's got an open shot at me. So make sure you get the station break in, Candy.
All I will say is every time the Brewers have been in the playoffs, the team that took them off made it to the World Series. Every single time, going back to the 80s. So just forewarned, watch out anybody that's getting in the way of the Mets. But as you said, it's a station identification break. So you are listening to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. If you see that red subscribe button on the lower right-hand corner, click it, like us, share us with all your friends and family. Monday nights, we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, it's Inside the Pigskin, talking football. Wednesday nights is the Sports Exchange. Thursday nights is Fire Up Florida, talking hockey. And then Fire Up, talking about You Just Never Know. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can listen to us whenever or wherever you'd like to. We're on all those platforms: Apple, Castbox, iHeartRadio, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where, believe it or not, the man with the tie wrote he's one of 3 authors on this panel tonight, but he wrote the book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morgenroth, wrote it, and George Eichhorn wrote the foreword. It talks about his 40-plus years in the media industry and how it has changed. Get your copy today on Amazon, Kindle, or Barnes & Noble, or there is also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. There is also a link on our website for merchandise. I know you want a South Florida Tribune hat or sweatshirt. Go check out the store today. We also have many writers on our website as well. You can also find us on Twitter or X at Tribune South. If you want to advertise or sponsor a show, call Scott 954-304-4941. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you, Candy. All right, let's go to Jay in the chat room. And here we go. Let's see what happened with my favorite team, the Orioles. They just ran across a hot Kansas City Royals team is what they did. So they really did. Kansas City was hungry, and they got in. Mark, you're living Maryland. What do you think?
I heard one of the most interesting comments. I am an Orioles fan, and I follow them pretty closely. But I heard one of the most interesting comments from somebody, and they said every guy in the Orioles has the same cosmetic makeup. They can hit 25, 30 home runs, hit 80 RBIs, their average speed, decent glove. They don't have different styles of players. And that in and of itself is probably more impactful than anything. They don't have that different type of guy. Even Adley Rutschman, he still fits into that category. And they got me thinking when they were telling me that. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I start thinking about all the guys, even the guys in the minor leagues that are going to be ready to come up for next year and subsequent years. They draft the exact same type of guy. And, you got to, Trent, this, you got to have an influx of different types of players. Guys maybe don't hit really well, but, they can run like lightning. I mean, there's just so many other things, but I will tell you that the city of Baltimore is extremely disappointed after the great year they put together.
Okay, let's go back to Jay. He says, I'm subscribed. Thanks, Jay. We appreciate you. Black Rock Bar and Grill for the win. Yeah, it's an excellent restaurant. My brother owns the one in Heartland. He has a lot of franchises, and I go to the one in Fort Lauderdale. And when I do finally get together with Trent, he's going to meet me in Heartland. Right, Trent? Right.
Right on.
And, of course, Adley is from my Oregon State University. We're caught up in the chat. We'll move on to the metropolitan Detroit area. Does that mean you think the Orioles aren't made up to win it all? I'm not going to answer that. Mark might be better off answering it.
I will tell you that I don't expect Santander to come back. I don't expect Corbin Burns to come back. There's going to be a couple of key cogs that don't come back to that team. However, they have talent in the minor leagues. They are the number one minor league team in baseball. And I think some of the younger guys coming up will help them. I really believe that they need to go out and get themselves a player that's going to push them over the top. For example, and I know we've talked about him before, like a Vlad Guerrero, like that kind of guy, they need to bring into that dugout and that mentality. I personally would have loved to have seen them make a run at Shohei, but it's too late for that. Maybe they can make a run at Trout I don't know, because Trout's from New Jersey. It's just right up the road here. It'll be interesting to see how they play it this offseason, because I know that the expectations were sky high this year, Jay. I am 100% sure.
Oh, we appreciate, he says, appreciate taking the order. We appreciate the questions. Anytime anybody has a question, we're going to put it out there. Thanks a lot, Jay. You're unbelievable. This guy is. All right, let's talk about the Detroit Tigers that even their series with the Cleveland Guardians, as Kerry Carpenter hit a 3-run blast in the ninth inning off closer Emmanuel Clase. Detroit was shut out 7-0 on Saturday, trading shutouts for shutouts. George, some thoughts about what the Tigers pulled off today. They couldn't hit themselves out of a paper bag, although they had a close call with Parker Meadows today, and an excellent catch by, I think it was Mike Kwan. Is that who it was?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of game Detroit loves to play. I mean, AJ Hinch, he's pulling all the right strings in a game like this. He's just been an incredible manager for them the last few years, but especially this season. He knows when and how to put in a pitcher. He knows when he thinks how to put in a pinch hitter. The Tigers are doing it not just with power, but they're doing it with running. And they're doing it on defense, and they're doing it with a masterful bullpen. Tarek Skubal is just lights out today. I mean, it was incredible. The Indians don't strike out much, and he struck out 8 Indians today. I'm sorry, Guardians, excuse me. He struck out 8 and did not get the win, because obviously the game had to go to the relief pitcher. It's just a great win for Detroit. I mean, if they would have gone down 0-2, it would have been very, very difficult, even if they were coming back home to Comerica Park for the next 2. It's tough to get out of a 0-2 hole in a best-of-5 series. So now it's a new series all again, and it's a huge win for Detroit today. I just think that this is a team of destiny. This team has outperformed anybody's expectations, and he's got a great coaching staff behind him, and AJ has done the best I have ever seen. He definitely deserves American League Manager of the Year. And the Tigers are just going to be they're fighting like hell. They're fighting like heck, fighting like hell, whatever you want to say, to win this series.
Well, we've been Tigers heavy a lot with AJ Hinch the last week, and he said the same thing I've been saying on these shows. They're on house money. They really are. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Mark.
I've been on board with the Tigers. I'm sorry for cutting you off, Scott. I've been on board with the Tigers for a while now. I mean, you want to talk about a team hitting their stride, and I picked them when we talked about them last week. I mean, you just get that aura. They have an aura about them right now. There's a sense of like confidence, like no one's going to knock them down. They have a certain aura that they're carrying. I would not be surprised to see them ride that pretty far. Maybe the Yankees have more talent than them, but that doesn't mean they're going to beat them if they play them. Sports playoffs are strange to me, because even the worst teams can win championships because they hit their stride and they start getting confident, and they'll come back from anything. Look at, the 3-run homer. Who was it yesterday? That's a typical example. And I'm rooting for them. I really am. I'd like to see a Detroit-San Diego World Series. That would really hold my attention.
I'm sure it would, based on 84. We certainly know you know your history, don't you? Well, let me tell you, folks, don't let that 7-0 score on Saturday make it look like it was bad. They gave up 5 runs in the first inning. They gave up another 2 early, and then they played Cleveland competitive. They just simply couldn't score any runs that day. I'll turn over to Trent, a former Tiger.
Yeah, good to see the old Tiger, my former team there, just getting at it, right? I agree with both those men. Like AJ Hinch is not only a good manager, he's a good playoff manager, and he recognizes he's got to manage differently in the playoffs than you would the regular season. This is a short go. You got to be very wise with your pitching. You have to be calculated. You have to be thinking 10 to 12 moves ahead at all time. And you need your staff on high alert on all thoughts. And hopefully he's listening to that staff. I think he's good at that. They're watching the players very closely about who we need and where we need them. And second, what Barber said, man, I think you see it in the eyes of these kids, man. They're believers. They believe they have what it takes. And man, watch out. You got to watch out with belief, man. When people have that, they don't think they can be stopped. And to your point, Motor City, they had to play playoff baseball to get in. They had to play a lot of games that mattered. Very similar to the Mets, very similar to the Padres. They've hit this playoff kind of mentality stride earlier than everybody else. And it was a challenge. If you look back on our 96 loss with Cleveland, we were a wrecking crew. I think we clinched before September 1st. I mean, we were playing September call-ups in August. And you're like going, man, now all of a sudden flip a switch on October 2nd in a 3-out-of-5 series against Baltimore, and they put it on us and could not flip that switch, could not get it back into that mode. And it was a different deal. You could see the mentality of it was we were off. And I really like the idea now with the Tigers at 2 at home. They could really win this at home and not have to go back to Cleveland. And I think that's a big deal. Cleveland's a tough place to play. And it will really matter if these Detroit kids, if they get this next one, I think it's all over but the shouting.
Amazingly enough, I was watching the whole game, and he was looking and itching for a way to get Kerry Carpenter in, and he did. And then obviously Carpenter rewarded him with a 3-run shot to win it. So you're right. I mean, the reality is this. But the thing I wonder in my mind is he wins the 2017 World Series with Houston. I'll go out on a limb right now that obviously, hey, he's a championship manager. I'll leave it at that, okay? We all know that everybody in MLB cheats in some way, shape, or form. This one just got a lot more publicity than most of them. But I'm going to tell you right now that this is the best managing job I've ever seen Hinch do above that 2017 World Series win, because he's doing it with much less talent. He only has one strong starter, and I know the Tigers will address that later on during the offseason. And he traded his one, Jack Flaherty, who, by the way, for Trey Sweeney, who is a contributor. When Trey Sweeney is taking over the shortstop job for Javi Baez, who undoubtedly was a bad signing, we won't get into that tonight. And Trey Sweeney is playing pretty well. But yeah, there's, as Jay says, some cheaters are out there, but they're all over the place. I don't care what sport you're in. So I think it's the best managing job ever with this group.
Yeah,
I really do. Come on, think about it, Trent. You're giving me an interesting look here.
I know, man. I just want to listen. I would be wrong if I didn't throw in my hat on Mike Scioscia, Joe Madden, Bud Black of the 2002 Angels. That was a big one. And, we didn't have a bunch of superstars. We did have some more experienced players than Detroit did. So I really want to give some props on that, because it feels like Detroit's younger. But, man, when you talk about not a bunch of superstars, like when you go down that roster in Anaheim, it's not like you got a bunch of $10, $15 million players in that genre. I think Tim Salmon was the highest paid player at $10 million a year. And maybe, Bartolo Colon was not there yet. So he, that was a $15 million guy that came later. Vlad Guerrero was not there yet. So I felt like Soch did a very admirable job. And also, you're also coming from a wild card spot. You remember the A's and the whole, Moneyball era and the 20-some wins. Was it 20 in a row? And they went into the playoffs on a whole nother high and lost that first division series. And we took care of the Yankees and took care of the Twins. The Twins took care of them. And then I'm just telling you, man, let me just at least nominate Mike Scioscia in there. Okay.
Okay. You can nominate him, but one of the things that makes me really happy, okay, there's my first really, is to be able to really, get 2 reallys in per show. Seriously. I have to have 2 reallys and 2 seriously, and I went to you to get them. Seriously, that's 3. So now you have a full house and poker, I guess what they call it. But here's the deal, okay? You can nominate Mike Scioscia all you want. But going into this playoffs, okay, here's the thing. Matt Vierling was the only guy that had playoff experience, and none of them had it. None of them. None. And I can tell you, I don't need spell check for this. None. Somebody type it. Okay, Jay, do me a favor. Give me an assignment, okay? Because I don't mess around with the keyboard. I'm afraid I'll screw up these shows if I do. So here's what you got to do, Jay. This is going to be your first test. I want you to capitalize the word none. N-O-N-D with an exclamation point equals Trent Clark. Okay, can you do that?
Hey,
Trent
hey,
is buying- no,
wait,
wait a
I'm-
minute, hold on.
hold on, Motor. I want one chance. And I'm just going to put it this way. I love your Tigers. They haven't won shit yet. Like, we won it. We'll see what they do. We'll see what they do.
That's fine. I mean, I haven't won anything. Nobody expected them to do anything this year. Everybody thought that there was a fire sale going on. There you go.
Jay-
Jay
Jay-
is it.
Jay-
Here,
Jay
Katie,
is
put this
right.
one
I
up.
am biased. He is right.
Seriously. Now I got 4 of them up here. I love it when I go seriously. It just makes me really happy. Thanks a lot, Jay. And I'll make sure we autograph your book in ways that you never imagined you're going to get it. So, but yeah, none equals Frank Clark. So I'm thinking about it. All you had was Matt Vierling was the only guy that had playoff experience, and none, and no any of the other guys had it until now. You want to respond? Go ahead. I'll take it again.
Oh, yeah. I want to respond. Someone run me that quick. How many Angels had playoff experience in 02? Someone run that for me real quick.
Well, no, you just tell me right now. We're all talking about the Tigers. I have the utmost respect for the Angels. Don't get me wrong. I really do. I'm talking about this particular topic that the Tigers are on house money and that A.J. Hinch only has one starter that he can trust. It'll be interesting to see how these playoffs continue to progress. If he can identify a second one, which would be a luxury, okay, then see if he can find a second one. And I'm not even going to begin to speculate there. I like winning, and that's why I picked the Mets and why you guys ended up picking the Brewers. And that's why I'm wearing this tie for those people that's joining us, the thinking man's tie. But I love these guys. They're great on the show. They all have a lot of different knowledge. But seriously, really? Okay, I got it out. I think I made my point. But I like the fact that Trent's the most respectful person. Motor City, that's bingo. I know when the man is talking to me. So now I know what Jay was asked. Who's the least talented team in the playoffs? You know what we're going to do right now, Jay? Everybody's going to be giving predictions. So George, I'm going to give you the 4 series. Just predict. You don't have to give me a why. And then I have a very good good story I want to mention as well. Detroit versus Cleveland. Who you got?
Well, of course, I got the Tigers winning that series. I had them in 5, but it could go 4. But I'll stick with my original prediction, not made on this show, because I missed last Monday. But yeah, I still got the Tigers to win that series in 5.
All right, George. I'm going to say it again. Really? Seriously? Just give me a team. Okay.
You want just one team?
No, from each series. One team. Here's how you do it, George. Okay. I just have to make sure that you understand how this works. Detroit versus Cleveland. Detroit. Boy, that's tough. I swear to God. I learned that in kindergarten and nursery school. I don't remember those days anyways. Who does? Okay. Well, I'll give you another chance, George. KC versus the New York Yankees.
Yankees.
Okay, good. He got it right that time. San Diego versus LA for the World Heavyweight Boxing crown.
San Diego.
Oh, now he's on a roll. Love it, George. New York Mets versus Philly.
I'm still sticking with Philly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Oh, all right. Well, now that Trent's giving me all this incredible body language, you know the series, Trent. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going Yankees.
Okay.
I'm going Padres. Man, I have a hard time going against the Mets. I'm not going to do it. I think the Mets are on fire. I'm not going to do it. The Mets and I'm going to return to my bless you boys, and I'm going to say the Tigers are going to finish this thing up. They're going to wrap it.
All right. Well, I guess the thinking man's time might agree with you with your Mets prediction. Okay, Mark, your turn.
Yeah, I guess I will. I'm going to stick with both New York teams.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. Yankees and Mets. I agree. The Mets and Detroit are the two teams that are found a stride. I'm going to go with San Diego. And wow, who's that last game?
Oh, here, I'll just go. Detroit, Cleveland, who you got? Which one?
Oh, Detroit.
Okay. Kansas City and the Yankees.
Yankees.
Okay. Next, San Diego against the Dodgers.
San Diego.
And then last but not least, Mets versus the Phillies.
The Mets.
Okay. All right. Hey, have I left anybody out?
Yeah, Scott,
No,
we
but-
haven't heard your four.
We could see a Subway series, Scott.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. But all right, but I'll stick with Detroit. You know, I think it's great for baseball that you have Kansas City versus New York playing each other because it brings back a degree of the history. Now I could go a little beyond just picking a team, Kansas City, the Yankees, but I'm still going to go with the Yankees. They're just too much. So you got Detroit, San Diego versus LA. You know what? I've been riding San Diego all year. I'm not changing now. And, you know, since I'm wearing this tie, I have to go with the Mets. Earlier in the year, I thought the Phillies and the Yankees were going to get to the World Series, but now I'm riding the Mets because they're playing. You know, I think the first two games, if I understand correctly, were played in Philadelphia, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, now Citi Field and is a location just like you have with Detroit. You know, you have both teams were able to earn a split. Now they have a chance to win it at home in front of their home crowd. All right, now I have a great feel-good story. Every now and then I like to put these on, but this one really is a good feel story. And why not during the postseason? Now, get this, from Jimmy John's driver to MLB pitcher, St. Louis Cardinals Chris Roycroft delivered food and worked on cars as a Division III baseball and basketball player. This guy is 6'7". After going undrafted and playing independent ball, he's in the big leagues. Think about this, okay? A Jimmy John driver, okay? This guy, he delivered food and he worked on cars. George, what are your thoughts about? I wanted to say Jimmy John, but we're going to talk about Chris Roycroft.
Well, that's a great story. I mean, you know, there have been stories in different sports, but I mean, that's one of the ones that's one of the more unusual ones, I'll say. I give the kid credit. I mean, obviously, you know, he had to earn his money and feed himself and his family, whatever. But no knock against anybody that's got to work a 9 to 5 or sometimes odder hours than that. But yeah, I think the St. Louis Cardinals have been blessed with a fellow that really knows what it means to deliver, you know, the sandwiches, but deliver and try to make himself a career out of baseball. I think it's fantastic, Scott. I'm glad you brought that up. That is a great story.
Well, I like to find these things here. You know, we
Yeah.
talk about being a magazine show, you know, from where a lot, you and I were brought up, journalists. You know, I think one of the things that's important that I emphasize in my book is you got to come up with different ideas. I'm not looking for the obvious ideas. Then any person could get clicks all day long. I'm not doing that.
Right.
Let's go back to the chatter. Jay, KC versus LA would be a crazy World Series. Yeah, it really would be an interesting series if you think about it. Now, Jay knows where I'm going with this. Last week I went on a rant about Howard Cosell and probably nearly lost my voice at the end of it because I hate the guy guts, period. I'm not going on another rant. We got Ralph Williams in the house. Hello, Ralph.
Hey, Ralph.
We got Ralph, and I hope you're doing well. There you go. So, no, I'm not going to rant tonight on Howard Cosell, Jay, but I'm glad you brought it up for those that are joining us for the first time. So, Mark, I mean, we're talking about a guy that's a delivery guy and a mechanic to MLB. That's pretty much what you have with Chris. Some thoughts.
I love hearing any feel-good story because all we really get out of professional sports is about this guy being unhappy, that guy doing whatever, this guy doing something else, that girl being, you know, whatever. It's refreshing when you hear that somebody has done something unsolicited and somebody recognizes it and pushes it to the forefront, especially as a professional athlete, because so many times, like I said, we hear about the negativity, but there are so many more good guys out there that play professional sports than there are bad guys. We just don't hear about them because it doesn't make news, doesn't have people talking. It doesn't put people clicks on your webpage and things like that. So, I can't say enough great things about what a man like that does for the sport, does for professional athletics.
Well, Jay summed it up right. Candy can put that one up. This is really good. I like this one. Yeah, sports media sometimes ends up being a little divas instead of monumental success stories. Boy, if truer words couldn't be any spoken than what Jay just put out there, I don't know any. So why don't you take it from there, Trent?
Yeah, I love these stories. It becomes the humanist side of things, and I think that people forget that Ted Williams left and went to go serve in the war and fly planes. I mean, these are just things that the men of the professional baseball leagues have doing a long time. And even some of the fun, wacky stuff, right? Sending the midget up to the plate back in the day. I mean, there's always been a couple of tales around baseball, but, it's a game of perseverance and you got to have some real durability and you got to have some real resolve to be in that league. You're going to fail almost 75% of the time. And you have to at least be successful 25% to keep a uniform. And so, when you get a kid like that, who's not willing to give up, it's just a testimony to the American pastime and the spirit. And I think it's all things good about America, all wrapped into one, which is what I love about the game and what I love about those stories. So great story, Motor City.
Thank you, Trent. George, here's the thing. We can talk about the playoffs all we want, but that's not going to stop me, from looking for these types of stories. I do want to mention one that really isn't as good of a feel-good story, but we sometimes talk about the big-name athletes, coaches that pass away, but this one really, I found this on my weather on the trail here. Former MLB infielder coach Mike Brumley died in a car crash. His last stop was with the Seattle Mariners. Why am I bringing this up after this other story? Because it's so easy to talk about the big name individuals in the sport that passed away. But here's a guy, Mike Brumley, who died in a car crash, and his last stop with the Seattle Mariners. We need to acknowledge some of these other guys that don't get mentioned. You know what I mean? Instead of all the bigger names. And that's why I wanted to put a little shout out to Mike Brumley as well. Rest in peace, Mike, to your family. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of a kudos on this show. I mean, again, the only reason I brought it up is we talk about the big names that passed, but let's give a little acknowledgement to the little guys. So my closing thoughts actually on the Jimmy John's Craig Roy. Listen, I'm going to continue looking for these. I really am going to continue to look for them. And I feel that it's important that we look at the other side. I really, really do. By the same token, Brumley, obviously it's unfortunate there. George, some thoughts about either of these two topics?
Well, yeah, Mike Brumley, 61 years old only. He died back in June, and it's a sad, sad story when you hear about these, anybody, and not just in sports, but anybody who loses their life at such a young age. It is a loss, and being involved in a traffic collision, unfortunately has its very bad outcomes much of the time. And I remember Mike. Yeah, he was a coach. He was a player. Yeah, in fact, in 1989, he did play for the Detroit Tigers. So he did a little bit of baseball here in Detroit at that time, Tigers Stadium. And Mike had a long career, going back to his days with the Cubs, and he ended up, I believe, with the Astros in his career, and had a very small part, if you will, of baseball. I think he hit only 206 or something in his lifetime. But Mike Brumley, he was a baseball guy, thick and thin, and really loved the sport. And it is a sad thing. But boy, I'm glad, Scott, that you do bring up, because you're right. The attention should not go always to the big name guys. You got guys like Brumley, and hats off to him and his career. and sympathy to his family, of course.
Well done, George. Mark.
Thank you.
When you told that story, it helped me, or it brought back memories of those guys who were Tim Cruz and those guys who were killed in that boating accident before
Wow.
the season started back in spring training. What was that, like 89 or something?
90, 92, 91.
Is that what it
92.
was? Yeah, I knew it was
Big
back. It's unfortunate. At least Brumley got to get to 61 and contribute as much as he possibly could. Left a good little legacy for his family and his life, being part of Major League Baseball and helping others. Like George said, hats off to him and his family for what he did and having opportunity and embracing it.
Okay, Trent.
Yeah, for me, this was, I really appreciate you bringing this up, Motor City. Brum was a friend of mine. We coached together for 5 years in the Angels organization. He's, an Oklahoma kid who got a chance to play for the Texas Longhorns out of college. He was a star in a very storied program down at UT. I think he played in the College World Series for the Texas for the Longhorns. And so, this is a guy coming out into pro ball with a lot of juice. He's a Jan Michael Vincent lookalike. He's hilarious. And another thing I think that's really important, going back to that 02 team, we brought up John Lackey, K-Rod, and a bunch of guys that were training all year with a AAA manager, Mike Brumley. Getting those guys ready and making a massive contribution, an unsung hero to a guy coaching the Salt Lake Stingers in 2002 and getting these guys ready for what's coming. And he had a ton of guys that had massive impact in the playoffs. If you look down that roster, it's significant how many guys were just critical that he helped develop. So, big shout out to Brum, man. I mean, horrible, tragic for his family, 61 years old. By the way, always fit, always healthy. This is not a guy that was doing the wrong things. He was choosing life and always, ready for what's next and a consummate professional. So, a lot of great baseball people are going to miss Brum. Obviously, tragic for his family.
Car crash is wicked. It really is. What else can you say? All right, now we'll go to Jay, talk about the helicopter TV show. I can't remember the name, Airwolf. I guess he remembered it pretty quick, so he didn't have to worry about leaving the air wondering what it was. That's okay, Jay. We all have those momentary lapses, but yours didn't even last a tenth of a moment to mention it, so that's good stuff. And he talked about 206 better than 205 I could do. In MLB, yes, I give myself a 001. Don't be so hard on yourself, Jay. But I figure I'd be lucky at some point. Don't worry about it, Jay. You're lucky for other reasons. So any of you guys, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, rest in peace, Mike. And you know what? Like I said, as far as as far as the Jimmy John driver, Chris Roycroft, you hear all these stories. Kurt Warner used to go out there and, what did he work in?
Shopping, a grocery store. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But they get there, so it all comes down to hard work and perseverance. Rather than doing parting shots, we're gonna talk about books instead. And the first one we're going to talk about is Trent Clark's book. Why don't you give everybody an overview of what leading your winning team is all about? You have about a minute or two to do it. Promote the heck out of it, all right?
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. I did write the book with Wiley Publishing, published this book August 20th, Leading Winning Teams, How Teamwork, Motivation, and Strategy Achieve Big League Success. Scott, I really wanted to write this book on my experiences with how athletes get so much value from coaches, from the experience and all the lessons learned as an athlete that now translate into careers after. How do I take all those skill sets? Because a lot of athletes miss out on some education, formal college years, formal training with apprentices and stuff like that. Other young people are all going to do this. Athletes got to stay in their sport. so they miss some of that formal training. But what they do get is high levels of education, high levels of coaching. They become hyper learners. They become experts at time management. They are competitive. They become fabulous salespeople. And so they have a lot of skill sets that bring them on. I really wanted to talk about that in the book, as I've watched so many athletes own companies and lead in a different way after, and how much that impact of always having a coach around them and devising that, and people who could take feedback and execute on that very quickly. That is not a superpower of our mainstream workforce. Here's the information. Now go fix it. That takes a lot of reps. And with athletes, that is not the case. You give them very quickly, and they are adjusting on that rep at their next at bat, their next time on offense, their next time on defense. They do it very quickly. And there's some superpowers that athletes get. And I wanted to write the book about that, talking about that. So I hope everybody enjoys it.
By the way, Candy put your book right to the righty as well, so they can see it in two different ways. Okay, George, you have a book to talk about. So there you go. And Trent, if you missed it today, Trent's on every Monday night. He'll tell it to you again. Also, Jay says, thanks for the great episode. You guys shared a ton of knowledge. You're very, very welcome. And Jay also adds feedback is something that people really don't understand its impact. Can you give it, take it, and act on it? Great call out. There you go. This guy, Jay, gets it. Okay, George, talk about your book.
Well, my love of sports and my love of sports broadcasting and sports writing started many, many moons ago when I was a student at Wayne State University in Detroit. I was never good enough to be an athlete on any team of any kind. So I took a love to this, and a great, great person by the name of Ernie Harwell was a mentor to me and to my co-host here, Scott. And, Ernie had great photos, and I got to meet guys that had photo collections of their career. So to me, it became a passion to get this book done. And that's to honor and recognize all those people that were fortunate enough to get into the business. And at that time, there were even some of us that were just hanging on by a string. I mentioned those people too in the book. But yeah, Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. It's available from Arcadia Publishing House. They used to be in South Carolina. Then they moved their headquarters to Atlanta. But they're a good book. It's a good read. They're good book editors and publishers, I should say. And there's a link at the end of my column to this book. My friend Scott is in the book. And of course, Ernie's in the book, and all guys that we looked up to and still look up to. Some of the guys that are still on the air in Detroit, such as Dan Miller and Dan Dickerson and George Blaha. My God, George is turning 80 years old, Scott, in the spring, and he's been doing Pistons for 50 years, I think. But yeah, there's a great story to all these guys, and it was a great passion of mine to get that book done. So thank you for letting me talk about it.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, a guy that may not have a book, but he's got an awful lot of other things going on. The barber, man, you're involved in a lot of things. Let's let everybody know what you're involved in, Mark.
Yeah, I've got a whole lot of stuff going on. We're in a bunch of networks. We've got our show's growing. We just one of my guys is actually doing a combat sports podcast now, so it's kind of impressive. He's doing MMA and boxing stuff, just to spin off of what we do. You can find us every week on any platform that you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Roku from 7 to 8 on Tuesday nights, which is a huge feather in our cap. We're just always looking to grow the show. Love coming on your show. When I get invited on to any show, I just give a shout out to everybody that I get to work with, because I think it's just one great big network. And the more we promote and push each other to everybody else, the bigger we grow. So, I enjoy doing this. At the end of the day, it's not my full-time job, but it brings me great joy to bring my sports knowledge, which my wife says I have way too much up in here, to others.
Well, you have a lot of passion and your energy, and you're knowledgeable. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And we appreciate you being on week in and week out. I do want to mention one thing that I really feel is necessary. We want to send our deepest prayers to those individuals in the areas that are affected by Hurricane Milton. So please, please be safe. We just had Hurricane Helene recently. I know that there's some casualties there. So for all you individuals that are affected by Hurricane Milton, please take cover, evacuate, do what you need to do, but be safe. Most of all, we do care. I just want to get that out there. All right, Candy, take us home because my voice is reaching the end of the limit.
Okay. Well, you didn't talk about the fact that you wrote a book. What book did you write, Scott?
I leave that to you, Candy.
Well, but you tell us what the inspiration was because you're the one that wrote it. So tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, a lot of what I wrote in this book, Lessons from the Microphone, talks about old school media versus new school media, and how we, George and I, when we began our careers in the industry to where it's become now. Through the partnership that George and I have had through the years, I've covered a lot of events. He's done way more local stuff than I have, but I certainly have a lot of miles. I've been to all 50 states, haven't covered a sport in all 50 states. Although I will say that my buddy Bob Ryan of the Boston Globe has probably covered them in most of them. I have to get back to Bob one of these times. But the main objective here, old school media versus new school media, talks about the relationships that I've built over the years, as well as some of the best broadcasters interviews and all that. So I enjoy doing that. And I also gave a shout out to some of the most closest people that are in my life. And with all due respect, George Eichhorn wrote the forward, and rightfully so. He deserved to write it because he was with me in the journey for 44. There'll be 45 years in December. So that's the gist of it, Candy.
So yes, Lessons from the Microphone, tuning into the enduring wisdom of visionary leaders, written by Scott, forward by George, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Apple and Google Books. You can also find a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where you can also find a link to our merchandise store. Go get a South Florida Tribune hat or sweatshirt today. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you see the red subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner, that means you have not subscribed to us. I honestly do not know why you haven't yet at this point. We have such great programming. Monday nights, we talk baseball. Tuesday nights, we talk football. Wednesday and Thursday nights, you never know what we're going to be talking about, except we do talk about hockey on Thursday nights as well. We are going to, like Scott said, we do want to put a shout out from all of our panelists on all of our shows. We are praying for the safety and security of anybody that is affected by Hurricane Milton. It has now been named the fourth strongest hurricane ever recorded by pressure on this side of the world. So it is going to have a force, and it's going to be a force to reckon with. So please take whatever you need to precautions if you are in any of its pathway. But besides that, if you want to sponsor one of our shows, you can call Scott 954-304-4941. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there is a plethora of information there. So go see it today. Also, there's two other authors. There's three different book authors on this panel. Go get their books, read the books, and if you have questions, you can always submit them to us for them. At Tribune South is our Twitter handle. Yes, Jay, Amazon delivered it in 2 days. It does not take long to get a book from them. So the other thing is Scott does a show on Wednesday nights on nofilter.net. It is a show where he talks with George and Jeremy, and they talk a lot of things. Since it's called the Motor City Mad Mouse Show, you can imagine what they're talking about on that platform. Go check it out today. Okay, Scott, back to you.
All right. Thanks, Candy. Well done. And yes, Tampa's going to get hit again. You know, Clearwater, I've been reading some things there. And as for those of you that don't know, I am a graduate of the University of South Florida in Tampa. So my deepest, my heart goes out to them as well. I take pride in what I accomplished in the Tampa area from my getting my undergraduate degree at University of South Florida, as well as my work at the Tampa Tribune. So with that said, that concludes this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. On behalf of George Eichhorn, Mark the Barber, Marinay and Trent Clark book, Leading Winning Teams. We want to thank you for joining us in this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, and we will see you next Monday. There's a lot of books, a lot of good reading material, especially as we get closer to the holidays. Good night, everybody. See you next week. Bye now.
Bye-bye.